the delicate balancing act, indeed, that we are doing on a daily basis. And I think the cover of the book shows that, illustrates quite well. So the balancing act that we are carrying out on a daily basis. So yes, so Jeroen's going to give us a short PowerPoint, but then we would like, for those who can hang around a little bit longer, we would like just to have some time to get some reactions and compare experiences, because this is why indeed we wanted quite a small group to attend, so that we could also have time to exchange on that. So Jeroen, please go ahead and give us some insights into your work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'll show the presentation in just a while. And beforehand, I just want to say that it's the book is about the working as a professional at associations in general, not especially for COVID times. Of course, COVID is a huge event with enormous impact, but the book is really about how to cope at an association, and how you can enhance your knowledge and your skills. So I'll try to take you with me in the story, and to show what the book is all about, and to make some bridge with the COVID pandemic. So I'll share my screen, I hope. Can you see this?
Yes, full screen.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we started writing the book. I wrote the book together with two colleagues, Arjan van Gijs and Arjan Vonk, at ADIS. ADIS is a social housing trade organization, an association. So we started the book pure from amazement about what a strange profession we have. So this is my fifth association where I work for, and it's a very strange profession, and you're never too old to learn, but you always have to keep on learning just to cope with all the and all the expectations you have to meet during this profession. So that was really the start of the book, this sheer amazement. And the core of the profession we found was the content, process, and relationship, as you see in this figure, where you as a professional standing in the middle, because the person you are, your own skills you have, make the success for you as a professional, but you move as a professional between content, process, and relationship, and then in a certain context. The context with ADIS is, of course, the social housing companies, but I also worked for a trade organization for the care for disabled persons in Holland. That's a completely different world, and that context has, of course, a huge impact on your work as an association professional. So this figure we used as a sort kind of cornerstone for our book. And what we did was that we said, if you want to grow towards mastery as an association professional, you have to grow on all three lines. So grow in your skills of dealing with the process management side, with the content side, and with the relationship side. And it's you see the little figure balancing on the dotted line towards mastery, and that's important, because we think if you just grow simply on the process management side, you will never become a master in an association professional. And the same is with the content. Of course, we have a lot of people coming from universities and started to work as an association professional, and because They studied as a university. Most of the time, they know how to deal with content, make analysis, quick readings, but most of the time they're not really very good at process management, or not really good at management of relationships. And the first 10, 15 years, they grow on those sides, but you will still have to grow on the content side. You have to make quicker analysis, make combinations with developments and trends in society, and be able to translate those towards your own association. And this is the core of the book. So we think that you have to develop on those three cornerstones: that is process, relationship, content. And it differs if you're working with lobby and advocacy, or working with innovation and learning. We call it sector-wide development, or working on a more commercial service level. You grow on those three lines. So that's the core of the book, and then we start with what are the trends and developments in the world of associations. You see on the left side, you see the TACK model. TACK is he's a university professor in Holland. That's a model which is for the strategic development of associations. It's well known in Holland. And on the right side, you see a sort of new model towards association 3.0. And what is important for this moment is that you see a trend in development towards more co-creation with stakeholders. You're more closer to innovation, to more digital developments, because most of the branches, most of the sectors are changing really fast. So what you see is that the associations just move towards the development, move towards the trend, and try to stay ahead together with their members to cope with those changes that the association faces. So that's really the basic idea behind the model. And it's one of the signs that associations are changing, is these kind of models. So it's a way to deal with the new reality. So what are those trends? You see, this is all common knowledge. Yes, it's really nothing new, to be honest. You see a society which is more and more a network society, with new relations, easy relations between all kinds of stakeholders, between members and stakeholders. Because if we look back and look at 20 years ago, if the ministry wanted to speak to social housing companies in Holland, they had to talk to ADIS, because there was no other way to talk to a social housing company in an easy way. If they wanted to meet them, it was far easier that we organized the meeting and we organized the information for them. But nowadays, the ministry can easily do it themselves. They don't need to use ADIS as some kind of portal for the sector. And we're still happy that they do at this point, but they don't need to have to, because of the internet, they can very easy make contact with our members. And that alone shifts your position as an association, from being a portal towards being in a more in-between network, and the power of your total network, not alone your members but also your network with stakeholders, is far more important than just being the portal, being the messenger of your members. So that's really something new, not only for the associations. It's a new trend in society, but it's a very very big trend for associations, because your reason of being, your raison d'être, is changing. So it's important that you change with it. And one of the ways to change with it is to create coalitions, to not just be the advocate of one single interest, but to make sure that you create a coalition with other partners, with another network, to support a common goal. And we'll get to it later, but some common goal like affordable housing. So one of the ways, and that's a first bridge towards COVID-19, one of the ways to make social housing more popular is that this COVID crisis puts affordable housing, puts having a house on the agenda, and that's an opportunity. So you see that there's a need in society that everybody needs a roof above their head, even more so in a pandemic. So that's a chance to for you as an association to support that need in society, and but not alone, together with other partners who are also able to supply a roof over the head over the civilians. So that's you support a common goal, and that's really important. And I think it's more important than 10, 20 years ago, because of the network society. And it has everything to do with having a purpose, having a general purpose, not just to make money out of something, but to have a purpose which is viable, which is close to a need in society, to something people, civilians, governments can address to and say, okay, that's a common goal. And if you have some purpose which is close to that, then you have more support for your ideas. And this purpose economy, this purpose society is growing more stronger, I think, which is a change for associations. So you have to make sure that anything you do, everything you lobby for, of use in the advocacy of, or anything, is from sharing a purpose, sharing a common goal with other partners. And that's something where you can relate to, where you can have make combinations with other stakeholders. So we come to that when discussing the content, but if you look at COVID, it's really this this need for a roof over your head, the solutions we have for homeless people, when homeless people sleep with each other, with 10, 15 persons in the same room. They don't work if there's a COVID pandemic. And so how do we cope with that? So that's really, and you can't say we have to look after the homeless people, because that's really, it's more important that you start with, we have to make sure everybody has a roof over their head. So it's a general purpose which seduces other people to look at you, to listen to you, to make sure that your message is heard. And when they hear your message, then you can say, okay, everybody needs a roof over their head, so also the homeless people, so help the homeless people. And how can we do that? So it's your selling point, this purpose, and it has become more stronger in society that you have to have some purpose. And of course, if you're in the business of affordable housing, most of the time your purpose is it's social. It's not purely economical. It's not about making money of anything. But even if you have a business which an association for logistics. You can't say it's important that we make money by allowing trucks on the Dutch the Dutch autoways, carways, but it's important to stress that it's important for the society that there's a logistic system, and that all the goods and all the food and anything people need to be moved from one point to another point. So we need logistics. So that's why it's important that you help the providers of logistic services. So it's not about the economical goal. It's about the purpose you bring to society. That's really important to stress, and also to stress in the COVID situation. Now, we are now having this short webinar, this short talk via Zoom, and I think we now, after 1 year of COVID, we can't imagine living a life professional without Zoom or Microsoft Teams or anything. But it's one example of the impact of digitalization on our work, which is really huge. For example, at ADIS, we have about 25,000 people working in the sector. And if anyone told me about 2 years ago, will you be able to organize webinars and trainings for all the employees in your sector, then I would have said, you're crazy. We can't do that. But now we can do that in a week. It's not that we're doing it right now, but we could do it. And I think just the possibility that you can reach all those people, that you can have a function in spreading knowledge, creating communities or anything, and reaching all those people, it's a matter of time that this possibility becomes reality, and a reality for associations, because one of the collective platforms business organizations have is an association. So it's a matter of time that all those new possibilities really change the way we work at associations. And I think that we're having this discussion all over Europe right now is a great example of that impact. Another impact, of course, is data. Data is the new goal of associations. It's very important that you make sure that all the data you have from your members is well protected, but also well used, because it's your new goal. It will be the cornerstone of your association. So make sure you get the good data, and make sure you make it useful for your members, because it's one of the ways towards the future. And another thing you see at the picture is the chatbot. That's one of the, if I have these talks in Dutch in Holland, it's not one of the most popular parts of the presentation, but it's of course also a possibility that the function of the professional working at the association will be taken over by a chatbot or a robot. So that's not really a very popular topic, but I think that's a matter of time. That's one of the functions we have at associations is making quick, good analysis of reports or investigations or anything. Well, artificial intelligence can do just that. So it's a matter of time that we have a robot at ADIS who makes analysis. And for instance, Robin, my colleague who is in the call, can use his skills at other territories than just making analysis. So so that's something, maybe not in 1 or 2 years, but I think in 5 years we will have an association robot doing part of the job we have at an association. And it has to do also with the data. The data and robots, artificial intelligence can do so much more with all the data. So it's a matter of time. So this is also in the story of us and our book, that change, that anything you do at an association starts with change of legislation, change of a new development in the sector, change of how you work, a new possibility of providing services. All this start is a change in how you deal with change. So I think it's very important because, as we say in the book, that change needs a change story, and it needs also a process of how to deal with this change. And that's part of the content management and part of the process management we discuss in the book. So change is the trigger of everything you do. It always has to do with change. And I think it's important to look at the delta, as we say in Holland. So look at the delta, look at the change. What is changing? And sometimes you're part of a change approach of someone else. After ministry is changing a law, and it is looking for support or looking for information, and discusses the change with you. Then you're in this change process from the ministry, but it starts with change. And so, how do you deal with those changes? It's by the content side is building a good story. So, how do you build a good story? So we have an approach in the book. We call it change reasoning, the change story, and there's some very simple questions. The why question, where to, you see it under the power presentation. So the where to, the what, the how, and the who, all very simple, but very hard to answer. So the why question is, so really, why do we have to pay attention to this change? Why now? Why is it important? What's the urgency and the importance of the change? So why do you have to make sure that your board or the staff of the association, your members, are paying attention to this change? And where to is the purpose, we discussed before. So what's your final goal? Where do you want to go? And the what question is, what needs to be changed? Is it the way you work? Is it a regulation, a law? Is there the change that you need to make sure there's a new service that you have to provide, or that what has to change? And most of the time at the association, you answer this question for your members. So what do your members have to change? And how do you change it? So that's for more the how are we going to change it, to the specific actions, and who has to change it? And that's also a question. Most of the time, if you ask someone who is a policy advisor or anything, they don't answer the who question because it's far too difficult. It's far too concrete. The who question is it's too difficult. So we just talk about what is needed and what has to be done, and who has to do it. Well, it's not my problem. So but for you as an association professional, it's very important because 9 out of 10 times your members have to do it. And it's important to know who needs to do it and what are their questions, their remarks on this change, this new regulation, this new way to work with new possibilities. So we come to that later, but it's a very important part of the change reasoning. So I'll give an example on the next sheet, but we'll get to that. It's important to know that these change reasonings, they change in time. It's not always static, it's dynamic. Because there can be new solutions at hand. So if you have the Paris climate agreement is 2050, that's the reason we have to talk about the Green Deal. We want to go to Europe to a fit for the future 2050. That's the where to. So what needs to be changed? We need to insulate all the houses because there's too much heat loss at the houses. So we need to insulate. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that with I don't know what the English word, but to insulate between the walls, or change the glass windows to make the thicker glass. And who is going to do it? Well, the technical companies. But this might change in time. The answers, because of innovation, might change in time. So the change reasoning is also a dynamic story. So your story as a professional, your content story also changes in time. And the answers we have now at Housing Europe with Fit for the Future, the Green Deal, I think maybe in 2 years we'll have a different story to tell, because the answers will change. And that's the answers on these questions. It's also important that you can be in the change story of someone else. Like I said, if the ministry wants to change something, it's their change story, and then if they ask you as Housing Europe or ADIS to join them in a discussion about a new law, you're really one of the answers to the who question of them. So they have a who question. Who do we need to involve in this change? Let's ask ADIS. And then you're part of their change story. And that's important to know, because if you're part of that change story, you can use these basics to help them further by giving them information, more valid information about what's it's like in practice, that their answers are wrong, they need better answers. You have all this information of your members, all from practice, and so you're far better in answering the questions, what the impact will be on social housing companies, because we as ADIS know best what the impact will be for our members. So if the ministry asks us what will be the impact of this change, we can answer those questions. But we can also enrich those questions, but we can also block the questions and also frustrate the questions. If you want to frustrate some process with the European Commission and you have these questions, for instance, the Green Deal. So we have to work towards the Green Deal because of Paris 2050. That's what the European Commission is saying. Then you're saying, why? Why do we have to go to 2050 Paris? Why? Why is it so important? Why do we have to start with housing companies or houses? Why don't we start with the industry? So you can all use these questions to frustrate the answers. So that's a possibility, but it's also a risk, because next time the Ministry of the European Commission will not ask you again for help, because you frustrate their process. But it's important to know that if you want to frustrate the actions of a ministry in your advocacy, you can use these questions just to say also the who question. If you have some discussion participation group at the ministry and there are different stakeholders at the table, you can start a discussion about why is this stakeholder discussing with us? They don't know anything about it. So why don't then you have all this discussion about answering the who question, and you're frustrating the process. So I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying it's a possibility. But if you use it, don't use it very often, because if you use them too much, they will not ask you again. And so so you have to be important, and they will not ask you again, because it's putting pressure on your relationship, and your relationship is one of the 3 success factors as an association professional. So it's not very smart to use it very often, but you can do it. And if you are really against a new regulation, this is the way to go, by frustrating those answers. And making the change story collective. So it's, if you are a professional, you start by answering these questions, but you have to be sure that you as an association, all your members, of at least the majority of your members, have a more or less common answer to these questions. So if they have a more or less common answer to these questions, then you have a common change story. And it's very important to do so, because the message will be and will have more impact. But how do you make it a collective story? That's what you do at process management. It's making content stories, change stories collective. Yeah. So I have an example, a small bridge to the COVID. So why now? COVID shows the importance of having an affordable home in Holland. I'm just rambling something there. So where to? We want everybody to have an affordable home. What do we have to do? Add more dwellings to the market. And how do we do it? We build 2,500 flexible houses every year for homeless people in Holland. And who has to do it? Well, social housing companies. This is some form of change reasoning. But I'll show that by changing the answers, you have a different. The first 3 questions are the same, but then it's also a way to cope with this development is by building 2,500 more expensive middle-class homes for people, so they can move from social housing dwellings towards more private homes. At least that's an opportunity in Holland. I know that it's not in every European country it's the same, but in our dwellings there are also people who rent houses and who could change towards a privately owned house. But if you do so, then it change. And if they move from our dwellings towards private houses, then that creates room in the social housing. But we won't be the ones doing so. It will be the commercial housing companies. So it's also a change reasoning, but of course we don't support this. But it's important to know that if you answer those questions, that most of the time the how and the who can be easily answered in different manners. So most of the time you agree that there's an urgent situation, you have to do something. Most of the time you have a common goal, the where to. What has to be changed? That becomes difficult, but that's also most of the time easily agreed upon. But how and who is going to do it, then it becomes more specific, and it will be also difficult in your association with your members to get some common ground, because most of the time they have all different answers to these questions. So that's so then your skills as a process manager are really needed to have a common change story. So just to show that the simple thing as the COVID already leads to different answers, and they're both valid change reasons. So there's nothing wrong with this. So process management, you see those 2 pictures. Process management really about support and about feasibility. So do you have support with your members? for your content story? And is it also feasible? Is it practicable? Can it be done? So do they support the idea, or do they support the solution? And can it be done? And it's very important to check both of those things. Talk about insulating housing is it's easy to do, but can it practically be done? Making sure that the 100 neighborhoods all over Europe are working towards the Green Deal. So is that possible? Is it even possible? If it's not possible, then you have to cope with resistance for your idea. So the feasibility is very important. And like I said before, your members know so much more about what's feasible than you. So they work in practice. So they work in the real world. So they know what works and what doesn't work. So check both, not just check for ideas, but also check if it's feasible, can it be done. And we call that the diamond. The diamond is just the figure by, and I'll show you why we use diamond. Is this this figure you see by first diverging and then converging and consolidating what you have found with your members. So diverging is really so. It's what we do if you have all these yellow stickers on the wall, and some that's really a big diverging. But that's all these ideas. But how you come to a decision, then you have to converge. You have to make sure that you summarize all these ideas towards a practical decision, and then you have to consolidate it. This is our decision as an association at a congress or general meeting or anything. This is our decision. Then we move on, and then you start a new diamond. You start a new. Then it moves from, do we agree that it's a problem? Okay, it's a problem. We have to do something about. How are we going to do something about it? Then you move and you build your story with each diamond, as we call it. And you see these support and feasibility are both different checks. So it's really important, like I said just now, most of the time, if you want to check if it can be done, most of the time they're not the same persons you ask if there's a support. We ask the general managers, the directors of the social housing companies, if they support our decisions, but not always do they know if things can be done. Most of the time, there's people in their staff who know what things if things really work or not. So you have to make sure you get that information too. Well, there's a difference between process and relationship. So it's if you have a relationship at a ministry, you know a civil servant, and you say, oh, and you have a close relationship. It can be important to check if some development to check with that connection, but it can also be that in the process it's important to skip your relationship and to move instantly towards the minister, and just to not to let your relationship know that you're checking with the minister to gain support for your idea. Then that can be very logically for your process, but it can be devastating for your relationship. So it's not the same. And most of the people think about it as it's the same because they use their relationship to enhance the process. But if you know more people at the ministry and you choose between the people, your contacts, then you choose for your process and you don't choose for your relationship. Because if you I don't know the English word, but if you bypass a relationship you have because of your process, because you have to move faster, then it can be easily justified. But you have to explain it in your relationship with your contact. So they will be angry because yeah, they will say, I thought we had a good relationship, and you would contact me with anything that's important, and now it's something important. Now you bypass me. So it's important to acknowledge that there's a difference, and to acknowledge that working on a relationship is not the same as working on a process. Okay. Well, working on professional relationship is, of course, do you all know the relevant players? And I think we all do, but what I see a lot of times is that we contact the people we know far too late. You have to have a good relationship when the shit hits the fence. So, you know, if something goes wrong, it's way too late to start a relationship. So you have to maintain the relationship far before that. And so when there's stress, when there's a big stress, they will answer your phone, which is really important, because otherwise you can't engage your process if you don't have a contact which you can reach. So work on your contacts, work on your relationships all the time, and make sure that there aren't any blank spots. So you fill in all the gaps. Make sure that on the different policy fields you have, be it the Green Deal, be it for affordability, whatever, do you know all the right persons? And if you don't work on it, and not in stressful times, but in quiet times. So, okay. So this is all, I'll skip this because we don't think we have enough time for this. This also has to do with making sure that the member has all kinds of contacts. So we're all 6 steps away from the Queen. So that's what we say in Holland. So people know a lot of people. So be aware of that. Be aware that your contacts know a lot of contacts too, and you can use them in a good way. And if you distinguish between members, which we do all the time, be careful about it. And so if you disregard someone, you will know it for the next 10 years. So you have to be really careful about it. So that's really, in short, it's a long story, but really in short, the content of our book, the cornerstone, and we deepened this cornerstone by looking at lobby and advocacy, looking at innovation and learning, looking at services, because all those processes are really adding something to the process you have internal with your association. You also have a process at the ministry, a process at the parliament, and you have to balance between 2, maybe 3 processes all at the same time, and that's really difficult. So that's the balancing act. Sorka.
Yeah, Jeroen, thank you very much. I think it's, of course, it's late in the afternoon on a Friday. Yeah. People are tired, but it's been really, really insightful. And I'm sure that we have a few members here and a few colleagues from the office as well. But I wanted to kick off with one point that really struck me near the start, 2 points indeed. And one is from when you mentioned the importance of co-creation. I would love to hear maybe just an example from ADIS, what this means in practice. Because you do hear this word being thrown around in so many different contexts, and sometimes a little bit randomly. Is it referring to just better and more regular contact to help shape the position with members, or is it also increasing the work with residents? Because this, we hear more and more examples. For example, you talked about the Green Deal, and we very often hear the fact that, okay, a house, we need to meet energy standards, but it's not the same as a fridge meeting energy standards. There are people living inside. And when you change a neighborhood, to get support, you need to work with people living in those neighborhoods. But not only that, we also see new examples of, in the broader affordability crisis, more active groups, community-led groups wanting to solve the problem themselves and being much more active in that. And sometimes the sector can be seen as a little bit top-down, sometimes some actors in our sector. So yeah, I would love to hear just, we can also gather some other questions if there are some, but on that particular point on the co-creation, as it was, I think, quite key when you kicked off your presentation as one of the main factors that's changing the way we work. I'd love to hear more insights about that. And also if this work that you've been doing on the book has changed the way you work on a daily basis. How it has impacted. Do you analyze more what you do now, and do you check the book to say, okay, am I doing this by the book? That would be really nice to hear as well. Maybe we can kick off with that one.
You mean literally by the book, or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should ask Robin, what do you?
Yeah, exactly. Evaluation.
Yeah,
everything by the book completely. It's under my pillow. It's
right.
The walk.
Yeah. Yeah, but we'll start with the last question. I think no, I think it's of course we don't use the book as a kind of checklist of it's just combination of ideas that it's most important that at ADIS we work at a good way supporting our members, and I think that ideas in the book help the professionals at ADIS to do that in a better way, in a good way. But it's far more important what their own answers are, what their own ideas are, than just copying the ideas of the book. So we use it for the development of the organization to create some common language, but practice is so much harder than just a simple theory. So no, it's not a checklist, but I think we use it now for the ideas for about a year or 2 years, and I think we have some common language now on specific, the change story, the process management. If we use some words at our organization, people know what we are talking about, and that's a good thing. So that makes working easier, I think. So maybe Robin, maybe you can say say something about that. So how do you experience the process?
No, I do think that's true. I mean, I worked for another association before, so I can compare a bit. And I noticed, for me, especially on the process side, there's more attention to that at ADIS than other organizations. There are really common terms and a common working method. I put in the chat wieberen, which is well, it's not even a Dutch term. I think it refers to the name to the person giving the training about that, which is the diamond structure that Jeroen sketched in his sheet for first diverging and then converging. And I think if somebody shouts wieberen at ADIS, everybody instantly knows what is meant with that. So I think the common language thing, definitely, yeah.
It's what we in the presentation use in English. It's the diamond. It's the word Weber is really from the candy. So it's a candy in Holland which has the shape of a diamond, and it's called a Weber. So it's not a trainer. That's really a funny story, because everybody
didn't know that.
calls this trainer Max Weber, but it's not his name. So that's not whatever. Well, this co-creation, if it grows co-creation and the coalition, coalition is really in the lobby and advocacy. So working together, side by side on this common goal, enhancing your purpose, making sure that people listen to you because you have a sort of kind of common goal, and it's easier to relate to. And that's we have an example of that. We just have an action agenda on housing in Holland with 34 associations, all different kind of associations, from the tenants union towards the union of municipalities, association of private owners of houses, commercial rental associations, and so on. So it's 34 associations, and the agenda is about housing in Europe, in Holland. So it's a call towards the government to do something about it. We need a million more houses in Holland. That's one of the agenda items. The co-creation with members, and I think the co-creation as a social housing company with your tenants. Yes, it's important to check. Also, it's the same as the process management. It's about support and it's about feasibility. If you have a solution on insulation and you create a home which is completely sealed off, very warm in the summer and also warm in the winter, but very warm in the summer. It's our experience that tenants don't like living in such a house. So that experience is really important if you want to create an answer to the future. So listen to the tenants and to their experiences, and it's because of it's feasibility and support. It's just the same. You're looking for support for decisions, and you're looking towards feasibility. Does it work in practice?
Reality check. Yeah, indeed.
So it's the same process management approach, and with members, co-creation is really about not just with the members, but we also at ADIS work together with other branches. So the technical, what we call the installation branch, with all the Green Deal, there's a lot of technique coming into our houses, into our dwellings because of the Green Deal. And so we need a lot of new technical innovation. That's something we can't do. What we can do is ask the right questions, to make sure that the problems we face are known about and are addressed, but we are not some lab of genius people who create new technical solutions. So we have to work together, and especially with those new ideas and new problems we face because of Paris 2050. It's a new terrain. So on those new terrains and new domains, we have to look across our borders, look across our own sector for help, and help by building companies, help by architects, because the answers we need for tomorrow are different than yesterday. So we have to look for new answers, and we can't create them ourselves. But also here what we can do is really determine the issue, determine the wicked problem we face. So and create support, make sure that something happens.
Okay.
This is a really useful framework, this support and feasibility, indeed.
Yeah.
You can see
Okay,
used in
sorry.
every context. I saw that.
Now, I just also use a lot of times the example of the international I would say just mathematics association. There's this in 1900 there were, I think, about 12 problems still left for the international mathematics of the world. So, and what they did is to say we have these 12 problems still on all the universities, and if you answer the questions, answer this dilemma, answer this problem, and you solve it, you get $1 million. So what this was I think one of the first crowdsourcing methods by creating all this creativity and innovation in answering those mathematical dilemmas. And we had, at this point, we still have about 5 or 6 problems left. So they solved 6 issues. But you can do the same as an association. Determine and call out and challenge the world to answer your problems. And we can't always pay $1 million, but if we use subsidies or anything, we can create some creative market for solutions.
I think that's a good plan for the weekend, to try to figure out those last 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed, I see what you mean about calling for responses, but as you also said, when you do ask what, there will be many people with different answers to that what than you. And this is also, I mean, what we are dealing with on a daily basis. Why is your answer better than somebody else's? I've just realized, sorry, Abdi, you wanted to come in, but I also saw that, Sally, you posted a quick question, but maybe as we're a small group, you could just demute and jump in.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. That was really, really interesting. It's a lot of the things that that my organization is thinking about for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. So I just wondered, what's been the hardest thing to change or to do in the last year? And what do you think is going to be the hardest thing to do next year?
For ADIS, you mean? Yeah. Well, I think the hardest thing for us at ADIS was to continue our work and our services towards our members while facing what the new COVID situation by working from home. So that was really a big change, and we managed to very fast create these webinars, and all the work just went along. And after that, we, because of the first period of COVID and working from home, it was doing those things you had agreed upon, doing those things which you have you talked about with your colleagues, and you knew what to do. And after that, there came new problems and new situations, and that was harder to discuss in Microsoft Teams because some of the things were collaboration. You need to have more brainstorm time, and it wasn't the right form, right manner of way to do so. So that was one of the hardest things to keep the organization together, to make sure that those new things, these new challenges also worked and also were appreciated or looked upon in the same way. So I think it's harder to keep the organization together. And I think we all experience that, but also at ADIS we have 75 people working there. So it's difficult to keep them all together, and I think it's just a dream. If everyone knows exactly what to do, that will never happen. But I hope that most of them move along in the same way. That's the best you can do, I think. But that was hard to do in the COVID period, and still is. because we're still working at home. So yeah, and I think the common the next few years. Well, in Holland we have a situation. There's a lot of pressure on the housing market, and there's this idea with the Liberal government that social housing companies should be smaller, that are part of the market, if you call it a market, should be smaller, and that the private market can answer the social needs, which they don't, of course, but there's this pressure that's really hard to, this paradigm is really hard to change, because it's this neoliberal idea that the market can solve any problem. And what we see is that it doesn't, but it's really strong feeling in Holland. So the change of COVID is that COVID shows that we need a strong government. That's so it's not a dirty word anymore. Strong government. That's an opportunity to use, I think. Even the Liberal Party has this pamphlet for the elections that we need a strong government and not a small government.
Yeah, I think we do definitely see this as a sort of a watershed moment to take advantage of this shift. And I think even, Sally, you mentioned last time, and we see in Wallonia as well, Italy as well, quite a few victories in a way, even if they're small victories, but we see that the lobby work of our members during this time has really brought in some wins on the financial side. So I think, Jeroen, it has been difficult, but we see that most of our members, they're coming out the positive side of this. I don't know if you see the same, or
I see the same, because well, during the COVID pandemic, and we're still in it, I think people appreciate and value togetherness. It's more, society is more important than the individual is less important. If you can say, there's some shift towards the importance of working together. But I don't know if it stays the same after COVID is history, or it's less threatening. We will have to see about that. But in this atmosphere of togetherness and stronger society, there's the support for helping the people who need it more than you do. So, well, I don't know if that stays. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, just one question from myself and Dara. So I know that EDIS annually organized the EDIS benchmark to compare performance of members on 5 fields. So operating costs, tenants, judgment, maintenance and improvement, sustainability and affordability. So just if you can share a bit about this process and how this benchmark process works to improve your relation with members and your advocacy work when dealing with the ministers. Also, if you can add something on the look in the kitchen. I saw this from the book, and I think it's interesting to see how EDIS have open doors with members to know what is working for them, what is not working, and what are their challenges, current challenges. So,
okay. The benchmark, yes, the benchmark is an example of how we would like to work as EDIS. I always call it 1 + 1 is 3 approach. So we have the lobby and advocacy, and we have the sector-wide development, innovation, learning side. I also have these 2 departments, if you can call it, in our organization. And both sides have to enhance each other. And the benchmark is an example of that. A benchmark started as a lobby and advocacy product, because we had some difficult times in Holland, and there was a big investigation from the parliament, and we have to make sure that society trusted us again. So we started this benchmark by showing what we did. We were transparent. We showed what we did towards the people, towards society, and that worked the first 1-2 times of the benchmark. That worked really well. After that, it became more and more a way to improve and to enhance the way we work within our organizations. So it became more and more a learning tool. More and more data was used to confront the internal procedures and working methods at social housing companies, and a way to improve their services, and that changed their performances. That made sure that we had some strong leaps ahead. We make some accelerations, and these accelerations, came, of course, serviced, of course, through the benchmark next year, and that was another way to use these accelerations in our lobby, to show that we just didn't talk and ask for new rules and new ways to finance our services, but we also made a difference ourselves. So not just talk, but also work on the solutions ourselves. So these two sides, the lobby and advocacy on one side, and the sector-wide development innovation part, enhanced each other, and still do with the benchmark. So one of the things is the benchmark is really the ambition to insulate all the houses, and we have the new taxonomy coming from European Union, and yeah, that's going to be incorporated in the benchmark. So that's a new challenge to face. So that's how we use it. We use it to for both sides.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if we have other questions from other participants.
Maybe one question on communication. I thought, so first I found quite interesting when you say that there should be a good balance between responding to kind of the set tone, let's say by the EU in our case, and also putting issues on the agenda. And kind of a question came on my mind, if to you or to Edis, also maybe other attendants here today, if there is some type of communication, be it external or internal, that maybe you think, oh, we've had already enough of this, kind of this is really repeating. That can be in terms of content, in terms of tone, in terms of type of tools. And on the other hand, if there is something that you feel there is kind of hunger for this, that there is need, and you're looking for a certain type of communication within the sector, and you're still not seeing that.
Well, of course, I recognize we have a strange kind of tax in Holland. We have to pay the government some 1.7 million euros every year, just as social housing companies. So we think that's a very strange tax.
Billion, I think.
Verhuurderheffing, we call it, yes. And we use that in our message every time, and a lot of people get tired of it. So what we changed about that was that we since 3 years, we just don't ask for the money back, but we say, this is what we want to do. This is the goal for we have to change in Holland. It's the purpose we want to We address the purpose, like I showed in the presentation. We want to make a contribution to the reaching the purpose, making sure people have a house in Holland. all people, not just the high incomes, but also the low incomes. So we can do that, and we can do more than we do now. But if you want to do, if you want to let us do that, then we need more money. So putting the purpose in the middle, in the center, and so it's really about the change reasoning. It's making sure the purpose is at front, and what has to change follows after that. It's not your ambition to get the money back, because just the money back is not really important. It's what you do with it, what you want to do with it. And if you want to do something with the money that reduces the problem of someone else, of the politic, the government, of other stakeholders, then you get support for getting the money back. But it's in that order, not. So it's really important, and it's the same, I think, with the European Union and Housing Europe. I think the message of affordable housing for everyone is still very strong. So there's nothing wrong with that message. And I think that common purpose can still create a lot of support with other stakeholders. And I think maybe the translation of that general purpose towards what needs to be changed to reach that goal is something you can look upon by communicating that more. Because if you just communicate the purpose, it's also very hollow. It doesn't say much, because everyone is for affordable housing. Mm-hmm. You cannot be against it. The difficulty is in the solutions. So now, Robin, so now everyone is for affordable housing. If you ask,
have you met DG competition yet?
No, now if you ask anyone, every civilian in Europe, do you think it's important that people can live in some affordable way in a house? They say also yes, but what's affordable for who? And who needs to provide those social of affordable housing? That's another issue altogether. That's the solutions. And then we differ from some of our stakeholders.
I think that's a really key point. I just saw Robin's reaction, Jeroen. And yeah. This is what we really need to tackle. I mean, particularly we see it here at European level, but our members are also seeing it on a daily basis. And it's when you deal with different ministries, let's say, you deal with the finance ministry, they have their goal. You deal with the energy ministry, they have their goal. So we see it, for instance, the DG competition, for instance, their goal is a level playing field for business. And affordable housing is not the top of their agenda. And
that's true. But then you make sure that they can't get away with those easy answers, because a level playing field doesn't, it's not creating a solution for anyone. It's not creating a roof above your head. If you have a level playing field and you're still in the cold, that's not a solution. So that's just the rules of the game. So if they will never, I think they never position themselves as, okay, a lot of civilians want affordable housing, but we want to have a level playing field in the market. Who cares? They will say, no, the private companies can answer those needs far better than companies which are subsidized by the government. That's what they will say. And then you have to have some data and investigation to show that it's not the case, not for everyone. Of course, private companies can answer those questions, but not for everyone. They won't. The market isn't a solution for everything, especially for people with low incomes, because when there's products are scarce, it's simple economics that the price goes up, and not all people can afford to pay the rent. So that's what happened. So and I think we show with this action agenda in Holland that the problems we save as a Dutch society are so great at this point, because we really have a crisis in the housing market. So we can discuss a lot of time. It is all technical problems and domains and whose market is more better than the other market. But our position was, the problem is so big, we need all join to solve this problem. And that worked really well. Because if you work, we need to build 1 million houses. So there's a lot of private companies still make a lot of money of that. So they support the action agenda because they see, okay, and we can go and have some principled discussion, or we can join them and make sure that the government creates new ambitions for the housing market, and we all profit. So it's in the story. It's sometimes you make sure that you don't have a principal discussion about something, and you stay on the general purpose. But if you can do that if you have a common agenda or you propose a coalition, then you can have this big broad story. But if you have a regulation which is coming ahead, then most of the time the regulation chooses between one side and another, makes something more possible and another thing less possible, and then you come in the field of solutions. You come in the field of answering the what question and the how question, and then you have to be more specific in your story, and you make sure that your story, your change story, holds up with investigations, with data, with other stakeholders who feel the same.
I think you hit a crucial point there as well about also the rules of the game, and how if you get that common narrative, you can also work on changing the rules of the game, but only if you have that coalition with a common mission, indeed.
I think in the Housing Europe, I think it's important to work together with other companies or associations who also work in the housing market and the rental market, and have the same broad message that housing companies are important, that having a house is important, that is important, that there's stability and enough possibilities to answer all these questions. And it's very broad message, and if you have that umbrella, then you can target regulations and changes more specific from that common goal. But then the coalition won't be as broad anymore, I think.
Indeed, but indeed this common mission and this, you want a tilted playing field instead of a level playing field, tilted in favor of your stakeholders. And then you want to make the regulation also mission oriented, instead of picking a regulation that picks a winner that is not you. So it's getting those aligned, I think. Yeah. I don't know if there's any other reactions or comments. I'm sure people are getting a little bit wanting the weekend to start, but if there's no more comments.
I wanted to add some things. I wanted to answer to Diana's question as well. So if I can speak from an Italian point of view, then I think there's a strong hunger for finding alliances, especially now when it comes to trying to build up or come up with a plan of a candidacy. For example, the affordable housing or the Bauhaus initiative. I think that's what they are really trying to do when it comes to communication within the association, but also with others as well. So I think here that might be a hindrance at the moment, that there is not enough transparency of who has projects in the pipeline. So they really crave to come together and then join that route together. So I think that's one urgent point at the moment.
And I hope also that the working committees next week will give quite a few answers, because Bauhaus is indeed high on the agenda of the Urban Affairs Committee. So yeah, but indeed there was an info session on the Bauhaus yesterday, and we see a little bit of light, but not enough clarification, I think. But yeah, the Urban Affairs Committee will be looking at that. Thanks, Eva.
Thanks, Eva. Yeah, I think the Bauhaus is a really, I think potentially a good opportunity for us, although it is, as you say, Diana, very vague. So for those of you who have not followed, from the highest level of the European Union, this Bauhaus initiative has been launched, and it's supposed to involve to kick off innovation on place shaping for the future all over the territory. It reminds me very much, actually, we hear a lot from Glasgow and Scotland on this place shaping. But for us, what is surprising is that, you know, the president of the European Commission, who could be talking about defense policy, or could be talking about, you know, the new space wars, or really is completely something else, is actually talking about Bauhaus, where we are really at the center, because Bauhaus was about accessible quality for everybody, affordable quality for everybody. So suddenly we find ourselves in a situation where we are at the center of this initiative. But as Eva said, it's sort of tricky to maneuver and to find a way of how to manage that. But it's a completely different way of working. I think the Commission has surprised everyone on that by throwing in this Bauhaus into the policy sphere, because it's not the typical way. But so it requires us all to adapt. And I think, as Jeroen, one of the other key points I took away from your presentation was that the answer is going to keep changing. And I think you illustrated that with how you adapted your benchmarking system. And I think that is key for all of us to remain dynamic, and we can only do that by staying in touch with members, but also, and that's crucial, and I come back to it again, members staying in touch with residents and listening to residents and having them shape the policy as well. And I think that's going to be the what makes or breaks our sector in the future. So Jeroen, I think, would you like to say a few words to wrap up?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. And
yeah, thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you. And just for the sake of content, process, and relationship, if you want to stay like 5 minutes more, we can just have an informal chat for those who didn't speak with us today, just to have an informal chat. In case you have to leave, thank you for joining the event. It was really a good discovery for me to find this book and to read it, and now to listen from Jeroen. So I'll be happy to write something on this, so we will keep you posted. And thank you everyone for joining, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot, and have a good weekend for those who are coming off.